Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? Um, we are going to be talking about something that's very, very important today, okay? But before we get started, let me introduce myself, okay? My name is Autumn, and here on this channel, we talk about current events, stuff that happens here in this country as well as abroad in other countries. I do have a second channel that I just got back after 2 years, Autumn's Backyard Garden. The link is in the description box below. I do have a Patreon channel, and over there we talk about stuff that we can't talk about here due to YouTube's terms and policies, and the link is in the description box below. When you first sign up over there, you get a free trial for a week. Okay, we go live over there. We have great fun over there. So let's get into it. Okay, what we're going to be talking about is what Tulsi Gabbard has declassified for us, and it's the past administration's strategic implementation the implementation plan, I guess you could call it, for countering domestic terrorism. Okay, so I'm going to read this to you. So this is something that is interesting and that we should be discussing. Okay, it says this strategic implementation plan, or SIP, provides a direction and guidance for implementation for the national strategy for countering domestic terrorism. It is organized around the strategy's 4 pillars, whose development was informed by comprehensive assessment of today's domestic terrorism, or DT, threat, provided by appropriate elements of the intelligence and law enforcement communities in March 2021. This SIP is structured to reaffirm and promote the goals of the 4 pillars articulated in the strategy, and actual implementation of the SIP should be approached in adherence to the principles which seek to ensure that U.S. government efforts to address DT remains consistent with the rules of law and American values. The NSC staff convened Counterterrorism Security Group Domestic Violent Extremism will no less frequently than every 12 months, 1, review implementation of this SIP to evaluate where additional work is needed, and 2, review the SIP itself to consider whether any alterations should be made to fulfill the objectives set out in the strategy. Any recommendations by the CSGDVE for amending the SIP itself shall be coordinated by the NSC staff. Countering DT demands coordinated government-wide efforts. The SIP items laid out below are assigned to particular departments or agencies as leads, sometimes with key supporting departments or agencies also listed. These entities have primary responsibility for implementation, but they are expected to coordinate with and receive support from other departments and agencies as appropriate, and to the extent consistent with those departments and agencies' mandates and authorities. To the extent necessary, the CSGDVE will be the forum to facilitate interagency coordination on DT-related matters and to address any obstacles or concerns that arise with respect to implementation of this SIP. So the first one is Pillar 1, understand and share DT-related information. Okay, and it says intended impact. The federal government's understanding of the DT threat is augmented, and that understanding informs relevant operations and programs. U.S. government DT analytic production increases and is disseminated to a wide audience of appropriate recipients inside and as appropriate outside of the government, including state, local, tribal, and territorial partners. Produce on a regular basis analytic products on relevant aspects of the DT threat, including the transnational aspects, and disseminate those products exponentially as widely as appropriate across the and outside the U.S. government. Products, when appropriate, should include an analysis of radicalization, recruitment, and mobilization to violence and prevention issues. Lead FBI, DHS, and NCTC. Determine percentage of increase in analytic production over the next 12 months. Determine percentage of increase in disseminated products across the federal government and separately outside the federal government over the next 12 months. Promote understanding under the federal departments and agencies of criteria for and track DT-related federal investigations, incidents, and prosecutions nationwide. Relatedly, review whether changes are needed to the national incident-based reporting system to better track DT-related incidences across the nation. Complete training sessions on how to report DT-related incidences and review of whether changes to NIBRS are necessary within 6 months. Develop and implement a mechanism for receiving relevant DT-related analyses and information from non-governmental experts, and share that information appropriately and consistently across the U.S. government. Review quantity and quality of information received by non-governmental experts, including how much the information is unique over the next 6 months. The next one is improve information sharing across all levels within as well as outside the federal government. It says DT-related information sharing increases at all levels inside and outside the U.S. government, including, when possible, making information publicly available in a manner consistent with legal and policy limitations on the sharing of sensitive law enforcement information, as well as the reporting of suspicious activity as appropriate. Continue to develop and implement more robust public reporting on federal DT-related prosecutions, increase federal engagement and support for public reporting by state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement partners on all DT-related prosecutions. Provide engagement plan for developing more robust public reporting on federal DT-related prosecutions within the next 6 months. Provide resources to state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement that cover relevant iconography, symbology, and phraseology used by many DTs, as well as data-driven guidance on how to recognize potential indicators of DT-related mobilization. Provide updates on resources provided by relevant identifiers and indicators to state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement within the next 6 months. Increase the intelligence community's awareness of the needs to devote adequate resources to collecting intelligence on foreign, racially, or ethnically motivated violent extremist threat, including through collection emphasis messages, standing collection requirements, and considering of raising the RMVE threat prioritization in the National Intelligence Priority Framework Counterterrorism. Provide update on efforts to increase the RMVE threat prioritization of the NIPFCT within the next 3 months. The next one is for illuminate the transnational aspects of DT. The U.S. government works with international partners to enhance information sharing on DT and to determine if connections across national boundaries are common among domestic Ts and related or similar threats abroad. Disseminate guidance and appropriate follow-up to U.S. country teams and diplomatic posts abroad to increase the priority of obtaining from foreign partners foreign intelligence and information related to the U.S. based violent extremism, overseas violent extremism, and actors and potential connections among them. Ensure that such foreign intelligence, once obtained, is appropriately and exponentially shared across the U.S. government and, where appropriate, utilized for subjects to be properly nominated for inclusion in the TIDE, TIDE, and the TSDB. Determine the number of DT related reports or reports related to the transnational aspects of DVE that are disseminated to and coming in from foreign partners after 6 months and 1 year after guidance is issued. Assess and identify foreign entities and individuals linked to domestic tea under the relevant statutory criteria and whether they can be designed as FTOs or SDGTs under relevant statutory criteria. Provide an update on the status of additional potential FTO or SDGT destinations within the next 6 months. Explore ways to enhance the identification and analyses of financial activity associated with DTs and related or similar threats abroad, as well as enhancing engagement with financial institutions on DT financing, including through existing provisions of the Bank Secrecy Act. Provide an internal report for U.S. government stakeholders on DT financing and potential foreign connections within the next 6 months. Enhance the U.S. government's understanding of how foreign state and non-state information operations, particularly disinformation, relate to DT threat. Provide an internal report for U.S. government stakeholders on key findings regarding this potential threat within the next 6 months. Share transnational approaches, good practices, and lessons, learning on preventing and countering RMVE across borders through multilateral foreign government, municipal, civil society, community, and expert exchanges, workshops, senior level bilateral public engagements, messaging, and resources sharing and other activities with inclusion of women, girls, and youth as relevant and appropriate. Increase the number of RMVE transnational engagement exchanges and other activities within the next 6 months. Promote awareness of RMVE and responses to it through relevant and appropriate multilateral and international bodies and fora. And then provide update within 6 months. The U.S. government improves the visibility and accessibility of federal resources related to DT prevention. You know, they talk about all this DT prevention, domestic terrorism prevention, but yet, you know what I mean? Highlight federal resources and partnership related to DT and targeted violence prevention through senior level public engagement, press engagement, targeted advertisement campaigns, and resource sharing with local partners. Update 6 months. Create a one-stop website to improve the navigability of available federal resources, services, research, grant, technical assistance, training related to DT and violence prevention. Publish the website within 12 months. Enhance public understanding of the role of federal law enforcement responding to incidents of concerning non-criminal behavior, as well as the role of mental health professionals, resource and crisis response, including through public messaging and engagement. Ensure that public messaging regarding calling, texting, or chatting to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline clearly promotes NSPL and or 988 as a resource for individuals who are in a mental health crisis or who have thoughts of suicide. Create a guidance resource that is designed for mental health crisis staff as well as ongoing mental health and substance use disorder practice settings on the current duties of professionals in the identification and management of individuals who pose a threat of targeted violence or potential DT. Channel funding through research on the effectiveness of digital literacy programming and improve sharing of such research across interagency and local partners. Facilitate development of evidence-based digital literacy programming by relevant agencies and local partners through grants, training, and technical assistance opportunities. The U.S. government implements evidence-based, locally informed, and public health focused prevention programming along various points of terrorism life cycle. Continue coordinated development and implementation of local threat assessment and threat management teams leveraging the FBI's Behavioral Threat Assessment Center, FBI field offices, FBI threat management coordinators, U.S. Attorney Office, DHS regional prevention coordinators, U.S. Secret Service National Threat Assessment Center. Continue coordinating development, expansion, implementation of local threat assessment, threat management teams led by FBI's Behavioral Threat Assessment Center. Ensure intra-agency awareness of key aspects of development of upstream preventative programming related to promoting individual level health and safety. Provide updates. Continue to drive the innovation of the evidence-based supporting prevention initiatives through coordinated investments in research and evaluation of DT, violent extremism, and related topics, including the role of gender, women, girls, and youth in prevention, and coordinate the sharing of research findings with the public and prevention practitioners through regular conferences and website updates. This is just, After reading some of that, I mean, I got through, 9 of 15 pages. What it seems like to me is that the past administration wanted us living in a police state. I mean, that's all. I mean, that's, maybe I'm looking at it wrong. I don't know. I mean, the issue that I'm seeing here is that this document doesn't explicitly define domestic, DT, all right, beyond referencing the March 2021 intelligence assessment. While it mentions racially and ethnically motivated violent extremism, or the RMVE, and other ideologies, the lack of a clear, narrow definition could lead to overreach or inconsistent application. Am I getting that wrong? Or, without a precise scope, actions like screening, watch listing, or prosecution risk targeting non-violent actors or protected speech, raising civil liberties concerns. This ambiguity might alarm critics wary of government surveillance, but the FBI defines DT under 18 U.S.C. 23315 as acts dangerous to human life that violates U.S. laws and appears intended to intimidate or coerce for political goals. However, public debates over labeling certain protests or movements as DT, e.g., Antifa or far-right militias, make this a sensitive gap. I don't know. I don't know. Because what you also have to take into consideration is that, remember when a lot of parents, okay, because this is for domestic, not foreign, domestic. They were arresting parents for going to school board meetings. Because they didn't want parents talking. They wanted them to stop speaking. Okay? So keep that in mind. Because, okay, I told you there was 4 pillars. Listen to the 4th pillar, okay? Confront long-term contributors to DT. Lethal means perpetrating acts of DT are reduced. Greater care is provided earlier for potentially dangerous individuals. Norms of nonviolent political expression and rejection of racism and bigotry are strengthened. Americans have increasing faith in democracy and government. Ooh. Increased intervention and care are those who pose a danger to themselves and others. Strengthen civic education that promotes democratic resiliency, increase civic management, and foster social cohesion. Rein in proliferation of ghost guns. Encourage state adoption of extreme risk protection orders. Drive other executive and legislative action, including banning assault weapons and high-capacity mags. Implement the Mr. 19 Hate Crime Act to address hate crime reporting barriers faced by disadvantaged communities by promoting law enforcement training, resources to prevent and address bias-motivated crimes. Improve federal hate crime data and analysis to eliminate hate crimes under reporting, mitigating xenophobia and bias, including by advanced inclusion of the nation's Mr. 19 response. Yeah. That's some bullshit right there. Launch a national public education campaign to improve lethal means safety. What? Lethal means safety by expanding access to and use of safe storage of firearms. And determine reimbursement opportunities to incentivize use of lethal means counseling in clinical settings, create federal coordinated office interagency strategy and guidebook for states to ensure effective implementation of the new 988 mental health crisis line. Did I read that right? Reimbursement opportunities to incentivize use of lethal. Did I read that right? Promote volunteerism and increase the amount of accessibility of opportunities for Americans to participate. National service through AmeriCorps. Advance legislative and executive action to increase voter participation and service and nonpartisan poll workers. Nah, bullshit. Wow. Did I read that right? They wanted to take our... Holy shit. So it seems like to me they definitely wanted us in a police state. Everybody was going to be on a watch list, and they were all going to take our. My God, am I glad he's out of there. All right, I'm out of here. I will see you in the next one, okay? You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping, and as always, fear less. So thank God we can now, right? Ciao.